This is the Flipping Junkie Podcast, episode 42. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. Today I've got Justin Colby on the show. He's a co-founder and president of the Science of Flipping, Omni Investor Group, and Phoenix Wealth Builders. Now, Science of Flipping is a free podcast on iTunes, great podcast. Omni and PWB, which is the Phoenix Wealth Builders, are both professional real estate investment companies. And he specializes in purchasing, rehabbing, and flipping distressed property in Metro Phoenix area. So he's got a lot of experience with flipping, and we want to talk with him today about doing direct mail on a budget. So last week we talked with Joe McCall and covered a lot of great a lot of great information on that episode for doing direct mail as a real estate investor. And if you're not familiar, most of the biggest real estate investors in the country that are doing the most volume, the most deals, are using direct mail as their top source of lead generation to do those deals. And, if you didn't hear that episode, you certainly should go back and listen to it. It's episode 41. If you want to check out the show notes page for that episode, it's flippingjunkie.com/41. You can listen to it on that page or go into iTunes and listen to it. We also provided some great download gifts in that episode, so you can get those from the show notes page. But be sure to check it out because there's a lot of great info in there. And if you have any questions from that episode or from this episode, by all means, go to facebook.com/flippingjunkie and put those in there so that we can cover those on upcoming episodes. And if you're not familiar, what we're doing right now at the Flipping Junkie Podcast is a series. It's basically a free training course that's done week by week with these episodes. And I started with the foundation and mindset and becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a house flipper, and what it takes to change what you've been doing and changing yourself so that you can, become an entrepreneur and run your own business and become financially free. So we started with that, and then we moved into building your business and your team, finding out who the key people that you need to be working with are going to be, and building those relationships and getting that started. Now, we've moved into the part that I find is most fascinating and what I'm most interested in is the marketing aspect of it. It's finding the great deals. I mean, obviously you can't flip houses or wholesale or build a rental portfolio or any of those things if you can't find good deals that make sense from an investment perspective. So that's what we're covering right now, and that's in this series. And today we're going to be talking about direct mail on a budget with Justin Colby. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Justin, thanks for joining me.
Not a problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I've given everybody a little bit of background as far as being the president of Science of Flipping and Phoenix Wealth Builders and Omni Investment Group. But would you mind sharing a little bit of your background, how you got started, what got you interested in flipping houses, and how you got your start?
Yeah, I think it was as basic as the market was tanking back in 05 and 06, as we all know. And I was a realtor at the time, and I realized my income was drastically being affected. I had very good income going into it, and I realized I was going to be shortened drastically. And so my business partner, who is still my business partner, and we were friends first, and we were just talking about he was working for KB Homes, which is a very large national developer, and he was selling insurance for them, and he knew he was going to be laid off because there weren't enough jobs there. And so we just kept talking about what the hell are we going to do, right? Like my income is going to be drastically cut. He's going to basically lose his job. And we decided we both have a good knowledge of real estate, and, investing, was kind of just getting off the ground. It was just when some reality TV shows were just starting and people were on the internet and YouTube showing some big checks. And we're like, dude, we can absolutely do this with our knowledge and our work effort. And it really just got us motivated, right? We saw the paychecks and we knew, it could be done. And I just went all in, right? I stopped being a realtor altogether in 2007. He basically got laid off and we just went all in, meaning we had no income. So it was a very interesting time talking about, trying to do this on a budget. I am very aware of how to do this on a budget, as I struggled for the first year for sure.
Yeah. So what was that first year like? What was, how long did it take when you decided to stop being a realtor and be a real estate investor and start flipping houses for you to start getting those first deals?
First deal took me 9 months. I had $0 coming in. I was sleeping on my buddy's couch. I lost my $500,000 home. I lost my $90,000 Lexus. I lost my $40,000 worth of furniture that I paid on credit card because I went from making a very, very good income to not having any income. And I was the lowest of the low at that point. And my buddy said I could sleep on his couch down in San Francisco. And so I did, but I had no income. And so it wasn't like this luxurious, oh, you're in San Francisco. It was brutal. I was literally eating top ramen. If he wanted to go grab a burger, I couldn't, right? I basically had to say, I'm cool with grabbing a burger, but you're going to have to pay for it, right? I mean, that was the conversations. And it's not easy to have those conversations, especially with a friend who's letting you stay for free. And so it was a brutal time personally, right? Because I basically went from having a lot to not a lot. But in that, I found I did a lot of soul searching and found the personal development side of what I really have to make it work. And I was able to, now I can look back at it, during the time it sucks, but I can look back, and that's what I really cut my teeth on. And that's why I am where I am today. Is I had the fortitude, I had the endurance, I had the grit and tenacity to make it through that time. And I think anyone who's, on top, or to be perceived to be on top, as I truly believe there's many people who act like they are but aren't. We've all gone through something similar, one way or another. And the reason why I believe that we've all made it to the level we're at is simply because we were able to dig down, have the tenacity, the fortitude, the endurance to push through those times. And there's good and bad times in everything in life, business, relationships, otherwise. And so to be able to get through those times are as important as anything else. So it took us 9 months, and it is because we had $0 to market with, meaning we had to completely do this grassroots, door knocking and cold calling. There was no other option. There was nothing. Networking, door knocking, and cold calling were the only abilities that we had to get started.
Yeah, and that's awesome because you found a way to make it happen even without the money. And and you touched on it, and I think sometimes people maybe just sort of, listen to that, hear it, and say, yeah, okay, it makes sense. He had these rough times and he made it through. But really the takeaway from that is if your reason for wanting to get in this business to develop, and get financial freedom is not big enough, you're not going to do what it takes to have to get through all these hurdles and make it in the business. And you had a strong enough reason because of where you were.
Oh, it was brutal. And, I grew up in an area that was affluent, but my family wasn't affluent. And I had something in me, dude. And I was like, man, I want something better for my life than what I was able to be given as a child. And I did not grow up without, so there was no woe is me and I was living on a park bench. I don't have that story. But I know, and I knew then that I wanted more for my life, period. And I was not willing to give that up and to just settle for a mediocre life, making mediocre money, having a mediocre family. And I'm still not to this day. I'm just not willing to settle on it. And so, maybe that's part of the reason why I'm still single. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I will do whatever it takes to create the life that I want to live, that I truly believe that I deserve. And I will do whatever it takes. And I think a lot of where people fall short is they aren't willing to make those sacrifices. They aren't willing to do whatever it takes, both in relationships, right, and in business. And so I just had that in me at that point, and I knew I didn't want to sleep on a couch any longer. And I was all in, right? And the way I like to say it is I committed full out and I figured it out. So you commit full out and figure it out as you go. And that's what I did. And that is a necessity to be successful in this business and basically in any other businesses. You got to be all in. In relationships, again, I don't believe there's you can separate business and personal. I don't believe it can happen. It comes home with you at night if you have a good day. It comes home with you at night if you have a bad day. Your wife or your girlfriend, or your husband or boyfriend are going to want to talk about how was your day. There is no soul and separate business and personal. And so I would say on all levels of life, right? Relationships, commit, be all in, figure it out as you go. Business, entrepreneurship, your company, be all in, commit, figure it out as you go, right? That's my perspective of how to really become successful.
Yeah, and it helps to, when your wife or your husband is really into the business as much as you are, because then you guys are doing it together, both moving forward towards the same thing, wanting the same things. It's just awesome. But
heck yeah, man. And if that is your scenario, God bless you. That is an awesome situation to be in.
Well, great. Well, I think your story really resonates with a lot of people. And, I share somewhat of a similar story.
Sure.
My background. I didn't end up sleeping on a friend's couch, but, before that and everything, we have sort of a similar background. But let's go ahead and get started in talking about direct mail on a budget.
Yeah.
And, first of all, how did you, were you one of the investors that was maybe chasing some MLS deals, listed properties, and got fed up with it and decided to switch to motivated seller marketing? How did you get into doing direct mail?
Yeah, it's funny. So the background on me is we kind of started to ask backwards, and hopefully that's okay to say on your podcast. Sure. I know my podcast is explicit and I can say whatever, but we started flipping before wholesaling, right? So often people get into this industry, they start with wholesaling and then they become fix and flippers and then go into developing or lending money or whatever. We started with fix and flipping, and the irony of that is I had $0. I'm sleeping on a couch, right? So we started this whole business grassroots, right? Is networking, door knocking, and phone calls. And back in 2007 when we got started, really it was a short sale world, right? So people are starting to lose their home. The equity is falling out of their home. The sky is falling. So we're dealing with a lot of deals that now are short sales. So primarily people are listing their homes. That was the big thing. And so we were working heavily off the MLS at that time. Hence why I think a lot of these took so long, because we got a lot of acceptances by the homeowner, but not by the bank. And so part of the reason why it took so long is because of that. Every day we'd likely get an acceptance because we were writing so many offers, writing 100 offers a day. I mean, we were just going, right? Anything we could do. We had no money. We were making offers on HUD Home Store. And so when that finally came to fruition, what we realized is there's better ways to purchase homes, because ultimately we started buying from the MLS, we started buying from the auction, but we were missing out this key ingredient, which was the direct mail. And we still weren't making a bunch of money, and so we didn't have the ability to just do direct mail on a budget, or that's the only thing we could do is do direct mail on a budget. And so we had to figure out, who are we going after, right? Or is it just the financially motivated? Is it divorce people? Is it, and we did this whole thing working with divorce lawyers and probate lawyers and so on and so forth. So for us, it was a matter of, we don't have a lot of money, so we got to figure out a way to mail without spending a lot of money, and we got to do it to the right people that would give us the best opportunity to get a deal.
Right. And so what do you see a lot of newer investors, or even experienced investors that are new to direct mail, what are some of the problems that they face when they get into it with a limited budget?
Yeah, I think what happens is right now, and I tell this to, I coach hundreds and hundreds of students, and we have our live coaching calls on Wednesdays. And so yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was talking to this, was especially experienced investors that may have found a little success. Their main question to me right now is, where do I find more deals? For newbie investors, their question is, where do I find a deal? What is the best way, right? Kind of the same question you just posed to me. And my answer to that is both the same thing. Get a list, and I specifically have lists that I work, but my budget is much larger now. And be ridiculously focused on pounding that list. So if you're going after vacant homes, if you're going after high equity homes, if you're going after probate deals, whoever you might be going after, do not just send them mail once. Do not just send them mail twice. You need to be touching these people 5 to 6 times at minimum before you can tell me or have any type of judgment of whether this is a good list or not. So if you decide to go with vacant homes, if you decide to go with high equity, if you decide to go with homeowners over the age of 50, if you decide whatever the list is, and there's a lot of lists out there, as you know, the key here is even if you only have a budget to send out 250 of them, you need to send that out for 6 straight months, because it has been proven in sales and marketing as an industry, not real estate, but sales and marketing, you have a 80% higher chance of getting the deal after the 5th touch. After the 5th.
Yeah, and he said 80%.
80%. So you stop on the 4th, and I hit him 5 times, it's exponential, right? So meaning you cannot quit. So my answer is the same whether you're experienced and you're doing 3 deals now and you want to figure out how to get it to 6, or you're just trying to get your first deal. You need to get the list, and there's a lot of different lists out there. I personally like to have people who have owned their home for as many years as possible. I personally like to try to find age of home. My business partner, Kent Clothier, has a product and a software that has just been revamped called Find Motivated Sellers Now, which is awesome because they give different filters regarding, are the homeowners older than the age of 50? Are they in financial distress? Is the home vacant? Is the home have high equity? How much equity? Right? So those are the filters that I would really suggest you focus on. And then you got to hit them 6 times at a very minimum before anyone can tell me whether that list works or not works. And then you got to be realistic, You and I both know the industry standard in direct mail is 1% return. That's industry-wide. Bed Bath & Beyond, who cares, right? We, right this very second, are getting a call response rate of 0.35%. 0.35%, right? So basically, we're just above 0.25% callback ratio. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what's the volume? Because I think as people, max out how many, letters they're sending or mail pieces are sending in an area, that's only so big, that drops that number down. But what's the volume that you're getting that on?
Well, me personally, we just dropped 47,000 mail pieces. So, and I say that humbly, right? I mean, obviously, yeah. I was living on a couch and all I could do is phone calls because I couldn't drop any mail. So if you're a new listener, if you're a newbie, if you're just getting started, if you have $100 a month that you're spending on direct mail, you are way ahead of me, okay? So I don't want anyone listening to this and think, oh, man, I got to send all these. No. Let me take a step back and frame this for you. You need to start where you need to start. If that's $100 a month or $500 a month, I would really urge you not to send less than 300 mail pieces a month, because just the numbers alone won't make that worth your time. If you're going to commit, you then commit and figure it out. So find the budget to send 300 mail pieces a month at a very minimum, okay? You need to hit them 6 times. So for the next 6 months, you are going to hit these 300 people, okay?
What's the interval there that you typically use between?
Well, for that small of a list, I would just send it on the 1st of each month, right? And then it goes into follow up when people start calling in, but that's a totally different subject that we could do a totally different podcast on. But again, the perspective here is I didn't start out at 47,000 or whatever we just mailed, right? That wasn't where I was. So you need to start somewhere.
And I wanted to bring up that volume because at the lower, I think people tend to get a little bit better whenever it's a much smaller mailing, like the minimum of 300. So it's just that, and I know you're making the point that, typically people aren't getting, 10 or 20 calls from mailing at 100 pieces.
Correct.
Right. So
correct. So the perspective there is, if you do get your 1% at 300 mail pieces, what is your expectation? 3 calls. That is 1% of 300. So that being said, if you get less than 1%, do not be shocked. Do not. And so if you get a 0.5%, you should be expecting 1.5 calls, right? It's just math. So again, that's why being consistent with your marketing is so imperative, because you might not get a call out of your first mailing. You might not get a call out of your second mailing. Why I brought up the statistic about 80% of deals get done after the 5th touch is because that's when you might see more calls actually coming into you. So do not come from a place of being discouraged after your first month or your second month. You really need to commit, be all in, and look back in 6 months and say, okay, how many calls did I actually get after sending these 300 people marketing, right? Don't go and change your list. Don't go and change your marketing letter. Don't change your envelope and think something's awry. If you are sending 300, the expectation should be 3 calls a month. So, that's your baseline. And if it's not 3 calls and you maybe get 1 or you get none, personally, after doing this now for 8 years, I wouldn't be overly shocked, because you're really looking for that 5th and 6th touch before people are going to start engaging with you. Fair enough? So I just wanted to hit home with that, is because, when I'm speaking from stage at one of my events, or if I'm teaching, people ask me how much I'm selling. Well, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I no longer have a marketing budget, right? I mean, I've become successful in my own right. And so I don't want that to be your mindset, because there's a disconnect a lot of times between someone who's just getting started and someone who's where I'm at. So you need to start where you need to start, right? And then grow into that.
Yeah, and there's that temptation. It's easy to say, okay, he told me, stick with it. Don't be trying to change things up. The call volume is not going to be all that great. But to send 1 or 2, and then you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt the advice. You start to doubt this, that, and the other thing. You feel you're throwing money away. And almost inevitably, even experienced people will feel that and stress about it and change things up, or stop a mail another list, and never experience that jump of calls after the 5th or 6th, mailing to the people. So
there's no doubt. And, like I started the episode off with you, is you have good days, you have bad days, good weeks, bad weeks. There's months where I need to sit my team down and be like, what the hell just happened, right? We had a fall off of X or whatever. And then there's months where I'm buying everyone drinks and dinners and great job, guys, right? And there's those ebbs and flows, and at times there can be very big swings, and you just got to roll with those punches, right? But what I am advising, what Danny advises is, we've been doing this. We've had a lot more experience than most of you. And for those of you that possibly have more experience than both of us, good for you. And, we'd be happy to help on a different level, because this is definitely more likely based towards some newer investors.
Yeah, so moving along with that, if they want to start with 300, is there, there's a ton of lists that we can get, and maybe some are better than others. And next week, we're going to have Tom Krall, and we're going to talk about different lists, so that'll be cool. But for this episode, on sticking with the whole budget theme, and to make sure that we focus on that, I mean, is there any kind of list that you would recommend for people that have the smaller budgets that maybe...
Yeah, I would. So I do everything off data, okay? And what that means is I want to know where the majority of the buyers are. So I go look for where the majority of the cash transactions. Again, my business partner, Ken Clothier, has a software called Find Cash Buyers Now. I go in there and I look up per zip code and what zip code has the most cash transactions over a 4-month period. And that's where I tend to focus my marketing on, because I know there are buyers there. So, it's one thing to get the deal, but then you need to be able to sell the deal. So once I know the areas I want to be in, and let's just say I have a buyer's list, because I do, then I would simply say, I want people that have equity so I can negotiate with them. If they have no equity, it's very difficult to negotiate because ultimately there's no money in it for them. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I would focus on the zip codes that you have more buyers in, where you want to be going after. And if you have a smaller list, I mean, vacant homes are awesome homes, and so are out-of-state homeowners, absentee homeowners, because a lot of them don't want to be a landlord anymore. A lot of them realize it's a good time to sell, and they're tired of fixing toilets and dealing with their horrible property management group and whatever it is. So I would say high equity and vacant are going to be your number one. High equity and absentee homeowners are going to be number two. You know, and then if you want to get even more granular, you can start talking about, you know, percentages of equity, how long the person owned the home. I want them to have a good tenure in that home. I don't want someone who just bought the home 3 years ago. That's not where I want to focus, right? So high equity vacant, high equity absentee, and in the zip code that you want in, you're going to have plenty, right? Even if you don't live in a big metropolis city like Phoenix and you live in a smaller town, if you're only able to send out 300 to 500, you should be able to get that with those filters.
Right. And, you know, regarding the vacants, you know, I find driving for dollars is a lot of times a good list to start with, because you're maybe getting things that other people that aren't taking the time to do that. They're just, you know, pulling a list off ListSource, the same list everybody else is getting.
Yep.
And they're finding some properties maybe that other people have missed.
Yeah, and ListSource is a great tool, you know, and I've used ListSource in the past, and you can get very granular there, right? And so you can talk about the age of the home. That is a good one. I know I specifically want homes built after 1950. I don't want anything built before 1950, so you can do that. You can say, you know, the homeowner purchased the home between the years 1950 and 2004 is where I would tend to focus some time at. Again, they purchased the home between those time periods, so that way there's likely a ton of equity. That's really kind of justifying that. I also, if they still own the home and they purchased the home in 1975, you got to figure they're kind of getting up there in age. Let's say they bought it at the ages of 26. There's a lot of years there, right? So now you're talking about people who are probably empty nesters, maybe need to downsize, possibly even need to go in an old person's home, whatever. Now, there's motivation that might not necessarily be financial, but it could very well be circumstantial, right? So those are the type of lists. Again, the more granular you make this in ListSource, the more expensive each lead is going to be for you. So I'd really watch that.
Yeah, so if you see a high price per lead, you might want to, you know, take off some of those. And I noticed that there's different ways to do certain things. So it's like equity percentage versus loan to value or something like that.
Yeah, and you can, you know, again, if I had if I'm on a budget, you know, ListSource is great, but I'm going to keep it pretty open, right? People who have bought their home in this zip code between 1950 and 2004, because then you're not going to, there's not a bunch of filters. The leads become less expensive, so you don't have to spend a bunch of money on your list. And the reason why, and it's kind of a shameless plug, but my partner Kent built Find Motivated Sellers Now is so that people don't have to pay per lead. They pay a one-time fee to get access to it, and it gets updated every 2 weeks, because there was a missing component that people kept having to buy a list, and this just gets them the list that gets updated over and over again twice a month. So
yeah, that's awesome. So what, you know, on a budget for the mailings, you know, so do you recommend postcards when you're on a budget, or do you find that letters are worth the extra expense?
I find letters are worth the extra expense, but here's the argument, okay? And it's an argument that we can go round and round about, and I don't know if anyone's ever going to win the argument. It's an argument about philosophy. Postcards get opened 100% of the time. Like, if you see a postcard, you kind of do one of these, right? And then if something catches your eye, great, you're going to read it. If not, it gets thrown away. But it got opened. There's no argument about it being opened. So there's an argument to say that postcards can work. And I've used postcards, and they've worked. I now only use letter. Again, I have a bigger budget. I believe that if you do them right, people will pay attention to them, and you can have a very high open rate. So we could go round and round. With a larger budget, I would say use letters. Possibly with a smaller budget, use postcards.
Right. What kind of messages for each?
My letter says, I see that you own, Danny, I see you own 123 Main Street. It's a good time to sell. I'm looking to buy. Give us a call if you are interested in selling your property, or very least would like to know the value of your home. We are willing to give you an unconditional premium offer. So I get a lot of calls because people say, what's an unconditional premium offer? It's an intrigue, right? It's a point of intrigue. They don't really even understand what that means. So then that opens the door for a conversation for them to now meet with my team and so on. On a postcard, I would say like urgent, or what was the postcard that we used? I want to say it said urgent, or property info or whatever. So people are like, oh, what is this, right? They think maybe they missed paying their property taxes, or they just, there's going to be a new assessment on their home or something that they're going to take the time to look at. And then on there, the message is relatively the same. The postcard that I've used in the past, I see you own 123 Main Street. I'm looking to buy your home if you're interested in selling. And then I've done a couple bullet points saying, no commissions, no repair costs, no closing costs, buy as is, pay cash, close in 7 days, to try to highlight some things that would possibly make them ring the phone.
Right. And so when you're talking about including their name and the address, you're basically talking about mail merge, right?
Yes.
Like including, and that's really big, because then it's more specifically for them.
Yes.
And it catches their eye and says, hey, this is for me because it's got this address of this property I own on it.
Yeah. And if you're doing your own mailer, obviously there's mail merge softwares and stuff like that. I don't do my own, so I can't speak educatedly about that. If you are using a mail house, they will do it for you. So if you are doing your own, obviously, to look up a couple options as far as mail merging softwares. Maybe Danny, maybe you know one, but I've always used a mail house since I even started. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but I've just always felt like it's not my highest and best use of time to do this. And that is the rub. You might spend a little bit more money with the mail house, but you get your time back. So for those that also not only are on a budget, but you're on a time budget, and you got to figure out how to be a father and a wife and a husband, and you got to make that decision. Are you going to make this a family affair where the kids are stuffing envelopes and you're doing this as a family, or is this, I'd rather be able to spend a little more money and have someone do this, that's all they do. They only focus on doing mail. They're a mail house, and it's best that they do it so that I can have that time and go to ice cream with the kids or go watch a soccer game or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, we started by doing it ourselves and having the kids involved. And it was actually kind of fun for some of it, because you could have contests if you have more than one child to see who can, hand write the addresses on these envelopes, who can do the most in an hour or something like that. Or, make it some sort of thing where they do it and they get an extra allowance or get to go get ice cream, like, that kind of stuff. But regarding mail merge, when I used to do that manually, that would be with Microsoft Word. You can do that in Microsoft Word.
Yep.
So you have the letter and you have the mail merge fields, and then you just feed it like a spreadsheet of the names and addresses and the different fields that get populated in there. Now I use reimobile.com, which is, our CRM system that does that for you. Where you have your mailing list, and then you have the letters, and it just creates a PDF with all of the different letters with everybody's personalized information in it.
Nice.
All right, so moving along with letters and postcards. Now, what about first class versus bulk rate?
Again, it's about cost, right? So first class can be more expensive. Bulk rate's going to be less expensive. People are going to say, well, it looks like junk mail. I get it. If you're on a budget, it's going to look like junk mail. That's my suggestion. I always make the argument. If I give Danny 5 basketballs right under the basket, he has a very high percentage of making all 5. Okay? So you give me 100 basketballs at half court. Could I possibly make more than 5? And the answer is yes. Can Danny ever make more than 5? And the answer is no. and I'd rather take my shots to see if I can make more than 5. And that's the argument, is because you're saving money, you can send more.
Right.
And I'd rather take my chances sending bulk mail and touching more people and possibly getting more thrown away than not.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's very important. And really, when you think about, direct mail and what it is that you're doing, you're sending somebody a message telling them that you buy houses.
Yep.
And so in order for them to contact you, what do they need to have? They need to have a property that they want to sell. They've got to have some sort of motivation to sell it to you. And people aren't walking around for 5 years every day having this thought in their head that, man, I got to get rid of this property for 5 years straight. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And so when you're mailing these letters, and what he was talking about was like hitting them with multiple mailings, is because you want to hit them right when they're having that thought.
Yep.
Right when it's fresh in their mind and right when it's causing them major stress. And so when you mail more, you have more of a chance of hitting them at that right time.
No doubt.
All right. So do you ever mix up postcards and letters? I know now you said you mostly do letters, but in the beginning, earlier on, do you ever recommend doing that?
No, and I think when people get a bigger budget, you can start playing around with some of these things. We call it A/B testing, right? Is play around to see if you get a better response rate. One of the things that we're going to be doing now is I'm going to send a mailer from my company, Phoenix Wealth Builders. Then I'm going to send a mailer from Justin Colby. Then I'm going to send a mailer from Phoenix Wealth Builders and a mailer from Justin Colby, just to see if there's a return that increases based on whether I'm a company versus a person, right? And to see if that plays an effect. But for those that don't have a budget to play with, not the best use of your money, right? This is something that we are testing because, quite honestly, I've done 90 days ago we were doing a test and it cost us $15,000. And I know that sounds like a lot of money. I'm not saying to be nonchalant about it, but when you're going to do a test, that test might fail. Yeah. And that test failed and we lost $15,000, and we have to live with that, right? Because it didn't pan out the way we wanted it to. And that's when you're going to start doing these tests, make sure that you have some capital that you I don't want to say you're willing to lose, but if you do lose, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I know it might be asking a little bit much, but would it be possible to share what that test was, or is that something that's more of you guys are still working on?
Yeah, we basically tested. So how we did it is we did a priority envelope versus a normal envelope. So the actual cost per envelope went to $1.50 versus our normal envelope. And we hit people twice a month versus once a month. So we had those two tests going simultaneously, right? And it just didn't pan out. We didn't find any statistics that said one way was better than another. Was it a total loss? I would say no, but it definitely was a loss in terms of, we didn't find anything that we greatly found as important to our business.
Right. Yeah. And so maybe the normal letters you guys were doing well enough to where they opened them anyway. So, the whole purpose behind the priority was just to have them open it, have a higher open rate, right? there was the same message inside of the envelope.
Exactly right.
Right.
So the only difference was the envelope, right? And so we hit the people, everyone was hit 6 times, and the only difference was the envelope. And the irony is our original mailer actually worked better than the higher dollar mailer in our test. And every market's different and everything, so I don't want to give you the answers. That's just a better way, that was just our test. And so that's why I said that, is because we were running 2 marketing campaigns. Yeah. And one basically didn't pan out and one got one deal, I think.
Right. And you brought up a very good point too. And there's always a benefit to every adversity, right? And one of the benefits to not having a huge budget getting into this is that you are going to find the things that, give you a better return. And it's not going to cost as much to do it, because there's a tendency for people to have a huge budget that get started in this, don't really know what they're doing. They hear somebody say to do something and they blindly do it. And they spend a ton of money on it and they lose a ton of money.
Yep.
And, whenever you're forced to do it on a budget, you're not using a ton of money, and you're going to find, because, just like Justin just said, the markets are different. Even the property values of homeowners that you're sending mail to is going to be different, and they're going to respond to different things. And it's really up to you to find in your specific area and who you're mailing to what's going to work.
Of course. Yeah,
Awesome.
That's a very important point in terms of, in my area it might work, in your area it might not, and vice versa. It might work in your area, in my area it doesn't work. And so take it with, I don't want to say the grain of salt. That's not how I want it. Take the information and store the information and have a little bit more insight. But at the end of the day, you need to do what will or won't work in your market, right? So.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So as you start to grow and you get, and that's the big thing too, is like, you're mailing, you mail 3, and even if you're getting a 0.5% call rate, and you get, what would that be? 1.5 calls. So you might just only get 1 call, maybe 2.
Yeah.
But how many calls, like when you get a great deal, somebody calls you, that's only 1 call. And you could make $20,000 off of that 1 call.
Yep.
And so don't look at it in terms of, well, I might just get 1 call. Well, it might only take that 1 call. And do you recommend, I'm always for making sure that you're answering the call yourself. When you got started, did you always answer all the calls directly, or did you have voicemail? Or?
Yeah, we answered everything. Our phone would just go, right? And then we went to voicemail because we started getting more busy and we couldn't answer the phones. And now we have a company and answering service, and then they email us immediately, and then I have a lead manager who calls the person back immediately. So there's always someone live on the phone. But again, when you're sending a lower number, that's not necessary. I would save all your money and that kind of stuff. So, but you just got to realize you're in marketing and sales. That's the game we play. You are marketing and selling, period. You are not in real estate. And as soon as you understand that, I would urge you to go out and buy sales books and negotiating books, because that's really what you are, the business you're in.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people that do really well in this business, it's because they're fascinated by the marketing aspect of it, or get real excited about it, because if you're not, it's kind of hard to keep yourself motivated. But,
There's
just
no
getting
doubt.
that first call will fire you up.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
when you start seeing even the little things start to work, it'll fire you up. That's why I love coaching, is because those moments I get to see again, and I get to relive with our students again, right? Like yesterday, we had a student who just sent us a $12,000 check of a picture of the $12,000 check of the first deal that they got, right? I remember our first deal. I literally have a dollar bill framed in my office of the first check, right? And so that's awesome when they can send a picture of the first $12,000 they made with our coaching, and that I get to relive that over and over again. So those little, like, first phone call, holy shit, this works? Yeah. Oh my God. Danny said it was going to work. Justin said it was going to work, but wait a minute, this works. Okay, Here we go. It becomes real.
Yeah, it's awesome. And really, that should be the first goal, right? It's not, the first goal is not to get a house under contract, flip it, and make a ton of money. The first goal is to get the phone to ring 1 time. Agreed. And when you look at it that way, it doesn't seem so daunting, right? And you might fumble that. You might screw up the call. You might, go out and look at it and not know what you're going to offer. But I'll tell you what, you're going to learn something from that, so that next time you're going to know what to do.
Yeah. It's always the case.
But so don't let it keep you from getting out there and just trying it. But we've covered pretty much, most of what I wanted to cover. We talked about what kind of list to get on a budget. Sort of a minimum number of 300. I like that, because sometimes people send 100 and, it's just not a big enough number. And, and when you say minimum, it's not just, don't just send 300, but if you can afford to send maybe 500, go for that.
I would say absolutely.
And, an idea of what to expect, so that you don't, with that 0.5%, 1% response rate. So after you mail that first 300, you only get 1 call. You're not saying, oh man, I must have got it wrong.
Yeah, you didn't get anything wrong. That's just what it is, the expectations.
All right, so keep it going. And I can, if we were to consider what a statistic for that would be, like how many investors send that first mailing and stop, what would you say? I'd say it's probably 80-90% stop, right?
Absolutely,
after the first
100%.
one.
Yep.
So there's not as much competition as you think, right? If everybody's kind of bailing after the first one or changing it up and going after another list. And you find pretty quickly, because I've got rental properties and things like that, and I get mail for those because I'm an absentee owner with a lot of equity. And so I get the mailings, and it's amazing. I hardly ever get more than one piece of mail from the same person.
Yeah. It's
ever.
Crazy.
So I hope nobody in San Antonio is listening to this. Well, we've got a really competitive market, so it's even more amazing.
I see you're wearing a San Francisco shirt. That's where I'm from, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd live there if I could.
Right? It is insane.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. But and so we covered all of that, and then postcards. Good. And what kind of do you remember or know what kind of prices people can expect for postcards? All you got to do is send like 4x6.
30 cents, I want to say, like 39 cents, maybe 40 cents per postcard.
Yeah, post office.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I might be off a little bit. It's been a while since I sent postcards, but I want to say it's 39 cents, 40 cents, something like that.
Okay, when you sent postcards, did you send them through click-to-mail, or did you get them printed and mailed to you and you print them out?
Yellowletters.com.
Yellow Letters?
Yeah, yellowletters.com.
And when you said you use a print house for your direct mail for your letters that you use now, are you using just like a local print shop?
Yeah, I just use a local print shop here. So he's great, but local, right? And I would really urge you guys, once you start growing and sending more mail, to use someone local, find someone local. Their name usually says graphics in it somewhere, more often than not, I have found. So I think this is, Arizona Graphic something is the name. Yeah,
that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, sometimes you search and you're wondering, like, what the heck? How come I can't find any, any printers? It's like same thing with, like, if you're looking for bandit signs locally.
Right.
It's like finding some of the. But anyway, whatever. All right. Well, I think we've covered pretty much what I wanted to cover on the show, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been my pleasure, man. Hopefully this has been awesome for your listeners.
Yeah, great. So is there a place that anybody listening, if they want to get a hold of you, how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have a podcast on iTunes as well called The Science of Flipping. And so if you would like to get a hold of me for any reason at all, you can just go to The Science of Flipping. You can email me, and my assistant will answer info@thescienceofflipping. And I have a great, because of my podcast, I've been able to interview many people as well. And so between myself and a lot of people I've interviewed, I put together just a quick ebook of the 15 most costly mistakes investors make right now. And so you can go ahead and download that for free, absolutely free. But I just want people to know that the mistakes I've made and others have made, to avoid them and to not have to do it. So again, info@thescienceofflipping, and just head to the website for the free ebook.
Great, and I'll include links to those on the show notes page for this too, in case you're driving and can't write any of that down. But if you go to flippingjunkie.com/42, flippingjunkie.com/42, you'll also be able to get those links to go over to his sites and get that information for him. So, well, thanks again, Justin.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, Danny.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
All right, another great episode, and that was Justin Colby and Science of Flipping Podcast. His podcast, check it out. Justin did a great job sharing a lot of info. Really do appreciate that, and we'll be talking next week with Tom Krall about different mailing lists that you can use. So that'll be interesting. Be sure to tune in for that one. And I said next episode, it might be 2 weeks. So most likely it'll be episode 43, but it might be 44. This was episode 42. So if you want to get to the show notes on that one, it's flippingjunkie.com/42. And be sure to subscribe on iTunes and leave us a rating and review if you're enjoying the show. It really helps to get some more people on here and get it going, get some traction for the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for listening. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, so I really do appreciate you listening to the Flipping Junkie podcast. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.